Oklahoma City. Welcome to the quarterfinals of Grand Prix Oklahoma City. I'm Ben Seck. I'm next to Jacob Van Lunen. We're actually going to be watching Patrick Tierney versus Larry Lee. Patrick Tierney playing a Jeskai Breach deck, so this is kind of a Jeskai control deck with Through the Breach.
Yeah, it's a really cool deck. It's something that we haven't really seen. It's kind of like they took the blue-red Through the Breach deck and they shoved it together with a Jeskai control deck to make this weird amalgamation, and it's working out very well for him. He was the last undefeated player in this tournament this weekend.
And Larry Lee in the 8th seed is playing Scapeshift.
Yeah, so what his deck is trying to do is he's trying to get a lot of lands in play. We saw this deck last round, and eventually he will combine Valakut the Molten Pinnacle with a lot of mountains to finish off the opponent in multiples of 3 damage. Once you have 7 lands in play, you can play Scapeshift and sacrifice all of your lands, and that'll allow you to search up 6 mountains and 1 Valakut, which lets you deal 18 damage to the opponent. If your opponent is at above 18 life, you simply need more lands in play so that you can start increasing that 18 damage exponentially.
Right. Okay, so the plays are like Ori on turn 3. It's a little bit of interaction, a mana leak on a Sakura Tribe Elder, and a little bit of hand sculpting with Opt, but apart from that, not too much action so far. Who do you think is kind of like favorite here?
So traditionally, Primeval Titan decks do pretty well against control decks simply by virtue of having access to more mana than the opponent. However, Patrick Tierney's control deck is winning with Through the Breach. And Through the Breach seems like a pretty good way to punish a Titan Shift deck because they're going to have to sacrifice all their permanents. The game basically ends when you do that to them. And they have no way to defend against it. Like, they don't have counter magic, they don't have discard. All he has to do is put a Through the Breach next to Emrakul the Aeon's Torn in his hand and have 5 lands in his hand, and the game ends, essentially. So I'm going to say that Jeskai Breach is pretty heavily favored in this matchup right here.
Okay, so in the previous turn, Patrick played a Snapcaster Mage on an Opt, getting some pressure on the board, but doesn't seem to have red so far, but I'm sure that he can have access to it because, look, there we go. There's a Steam Vents. Now Larry Lee is cycling a Sweltering Suns.
Yeah, Sweltering Sun's a nice addition to these Scapeshift style of decks. Previously when they played these sweeper cards, it was a pretty big problem because they were forced to play some number of them in the main deck, but then you'd play against decks where they were just absolutely dead cards, and it would feel really bad for it to be your draw step. But here, he has Sweltering Suns, which has cycling, so that allows him to just replace it in his hand with another card.
Okay, so plays another land, an extra land with the Explore. So he's very close to actually getting to Primeval Titan. Next turn has the mana for that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's very good, but Patrick has a decent amount of counter magic in his deck, and he can use that counter magic to slow the game down to the point of where he's able to put together his combo.
Okay, Patrick attacking with the Snapcaster Mage, getting Larry down to 16. Okay.
We've just acquired deck lists.
So what is, Patrick giving up for actually putting the Through the Reach combo into his deck?
So it depends on how you look at it. His deck, by giving that up, is not playing the creatures that you might play that would apply pressure on his opponents otherwise. Things like Vendilion Click, things like Geist of Saint Draft, things like Spell Queller, and in a sense, he doesn't get kind of that counter-punchy, aggro control feel to the deck that other Jeskai decks often do. And he's definitely not as pure control as the more controlling versions of the deck are. However, what he gains is an unbelievable level of power against decks like the one he's playing against right now. These decks that don't have discard, these decks that don't have counter magic, these decks will just lose when he puts the Eldrazi next to the Through the Breach in his hand. The game ends, and that's an incredible thing to have access to.
Okay, so let's have a look at Larry Lee's Scapeshift deck. Is there anything interesting going on here?
His main deck looks pretty stock. He is playing 2 Colony Heart Expedition, which is a card which has waxed and waned in terms of popularity over the years. Post board, he has some interesting cards here. I think Witchbane Orb is a card that we've seen from time to time in these types of sideboards that seems like it can be good in a lot of matchups for a deck like this.
It's generally really good in the mirror because
Yes.
it turns off being able to actually go with Scape Shift, like if your opponent has it.
Yeah, however, not very good in this matchup. I think in this matchup, he's probably going to be sideboarding in a Beast Within, perhaps a Reclamation Sage if he happens to see the Search for Azcantas, just because he's looking for things to replace Sweltering Suns with.
So Larry Lee using Summoner's Pact to retrieve a Primeval Titan, which he's going to be able to cast. So one of the benefits of like the Titan Shift deck in general is that it can play a pretty reasonable fair game.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, you're just ramping into your Titan and or your Scape Shift, and when you do that, it becomes very, very difficult to lose. Is Patrick allowing this to resolve?
I don't know. It looked like Patrick actually had a reasonable amount of land in hand, so he doesn't have that many counters. So I think he might just be saying it's okay. He does have a Path to Exile, so he'll be able to get the land, but won't be able to take advantage of it next turn.
All right, so Larry, not in that bad of a spot here. He's going to get to search for this land for Path to Exile. Then he's going to get to search up 2 more lands after that. And now, one of the things that Larry needs to remember is that he cast Summoner's Pact this turn. That basically becomes one of the more important things. And because he has these 2 Valakut's and he has these 5 mountains in play, every single mountain that Larry plays for the rest of the game is going to deal 6 damage to Patrick, which is really powerful. And remember, his deck is like all ramp spells and lands. So now he can just start playing lands, playing those ramp spells, and those are going to kill Patrick.
Okay. So Patrick attacking for 4 to Larry, and putting him down to 10. Paying for the pact. Always a wise move.
Yes. Very much so.
And explore for Larry. Patrick just letting that one go. Do you think if he plays a mountain, he's just going to get rid of the Snapcasters just to give himself some breathing room?
I imagine he would, because if he doesn't, then the double burn spell could finish off the game, and he knows that his opponent is playing, lightning bolts and lightning helixes. Yep,
I think our life total is a little bit off right now. That I believe that Larry's
because Larry's
10.
at 10, right? Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So I think Larry's trying to decide whether he should play a mountain. Kill the Snapcasters.
He is trying to decide what he's going to do with these Valakut triggers. So,
he's actually going upstairs, putting Patrick to 6 now, 12 now. He's down to 7. He was able to play 2 land because of the Explore.
Yeah, and now he has Lightning Bolt and another mountain in hand. So unless Larry's able to finish this game off on this turn, this game's over.
Yeah, I mean, I think his best shot is actually to through the breach an Emrakul, because that would actually put him pretty far down on land and probably not enough to actually...
Yeah, well, he just wins, right? Because he deals enough damage.
That's true, too.
But something that's interesting that's happening here is that Patrick Tierney has a Lightning Helix in hand. And Lightning Helix changes the math.
Mm-hmm.
So Larry Lee, he has that land. He has that Lightning Bolt. That's 9 damage. Patrick Tierney's at 7. The thing is, Patrick Tierney can jump up from 7 up to 10, leaving himself at 1 life, which puts him out of range of what Larry Lee is going to do on this next turn. Oh, he's using the Lightning Bolt on the Snapcaster Mage.
Why do you think he decided that? I mean, he was going so much about to upstairs, and he seems to have just changed his mind here.
It's interesting. He seems to have changed gears here, but maybe he had a good read. Maybe he thought, oh, he drew a lightning helix. I feel it. Feel it in my bones.
Okay. Now
I like
actually
now he loses, right? Yeah, basically. Oh, well, so this lightning helix puts him up to 10. However, Larry Lee has, 4 Valakut triggers ready to go. He can sacrifice this Secure Tribe Elder, deal 6, play his land, deal 6, and that'll be the game.
Okay, so Patrick goes to 4, and now he sacrifices a Secure Tribe Elder, doing 6, putting him to -2. And so Larry Lee actually takes the first game with the 2 Valakuts in his deck, just kind of like doing the whole amount of damage. I mean,
wow,
it was just got out a lot of land. I mean, that Primeval Titan was really pivotal, even though it didn't get to attack.
Yeah, and I was very surprised to see it resolve. Even, it's one of those things. And I mean, you take a look at Patrick Tierney's deck list, and there's not really that much counter magic.
Yeah, I mean, he's shaved a little bit here. So he has 3 cryptics instead of 4, so that's a little bit less. He only has 2 mana leaks. He has 2 Remands, but that's it. No more counter spells. Okay, now we're just going to move over to the second quarterfinal. Adam Pannone versus Raymond deviteaux. It's Titan Shift versus Living End. It looks like we're in the... Let's see. Trying to figure out if we've actually... Yeah, so I believe this Monstrous Carabid actually was just hard cast, because I see a removed Simian Spirit Guide and only 4 lands, so I don't think there's any other way for that Carabid to actually be in play other than just being, turboed a little bit with that Simian Spirit Guide. But on the other side, Adam has one of his best threats, Primeval Titan. Looks like Raymond's in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, it looks like Raymond could just lose on the next turn. Primeval Titan could attack, find a pair of Valakuts, then Adam could, just kill him. Sacrifice his Wooded Foothills, play land from his hand. That's it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's possible that Raymond could cycle a few times and go for a Living End here, right?
Absolutely. And that's what this Living End deck does, is it's playing a whole bunch of cycling creatures. The deck got a lot better recently as more cyclers came out. There are so many new cards that only cost 1 to cycle, or, just basically fill your graveyard much more quickly. And in cycling for 1, they're able to find your Cascade spells that let you cast your Living End for free. And they're also, making your combo more powerful when it happens. The incredible thing about Living End is that it not only puts this huge army into play for you, but it also kills everything on the battlefield.
Okay, so it actually seems that the way the Carabid got into play was actually the Living End, because there's 1 in the graveyard. Raymond decides to try and knock Adam's mana down a little bit with a Beast Within. What do you think he's trying to keep him off?
So I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to prevent Adam from getting to that critical point, because a lot of the time what people want to do is they want to have, some number of Valakuts and exactly 4 mountains in play before they attack with the Primeval Titan, and then they search for 2 mountains at the same time. And even though they only had 4 mountains and the Valakuts in play before they searched, they get to deal the damage for all of the mountains because they're all coming to play at the same time, and they check each other at the same time. So that's what he's trying to keep him off of.
So Ramus casting a Demonic Dread on his Monstrous Carabid really doesn't really care about the Dread ability too much. He's actually more interested in the Cascade. Mm-hmm. And as you said, Jack, he's going to be able to destroy the 2 creatures on the side of Adam and his own Monstrous Carabid, but ultimately that's gives them a lot of time, gets rid of one of the biggest threats on Adam's side, and I think he gets to return a Fulminator Mage, which also may allow him to knock Adam off a few more turns. Adam gets a Sakura Tribe Elder of his own.
And Fulminator Mage, very good in this matchup. It's a card that Living End wants to play in the main deck. because it's a creature that you can just sacrifice for some sort of advantage. There we have a look at Demonic Dread. For those that haven't really seen the Living End deck before, it plays no spells with converted casting cost below 3. That way, when you cast a card like Demonic Dread, when you start cascading, the only thing you're able to hit is Living End. And as a result, you get to, destroy all the creatures on the battlefield and return all of your creatures from the graveyard back to play.
So Adam decides to sacrifice his Sakura Tribe Elder at end of turn, possibly so he can actually, if he happens to draw a 6-mana spell, he's actually able to cast it. Because if he draws a Titan, he may want to actually use that this turn, especially if he doesn't actually have an untapped land available to him.
And if he's able to play a land, any land, and Scape Shift on the following turn, that would be lethal.
Yep, he does have a Scape Shift in hand as far as I can tell.
So
I got a quick glimpse of his hand, so he may just be trying to, set himself up for this turn. And
need a land?
I think he's got a Valakut and a Scape Shift, so, but I'm not positive.
Should be good.
Okay.
Ooh. Okay.
That might not be the case because I don't know if you'd actually want to sacrifice the Wooded Foothills beforehand if you had Escape Shift.
I agree. If he had Landscape Shift, I would be surprised if he had sacrificed those Wooded Foothills right now. I also don't know how many mountains are remaining in his graveyard or in his deck at this point, which makes things a bit confusing. I don't know how many loops we've had of this Fulminator Mage.
I think it's gone twice, so it's
plus the Beast Within. He's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They usually can lose anywhere up of 5 or 6 lands before it starts getting really troublesome, and they always have the option of getting multiple Valakuts into play.
So he doesn't have the Scape Shift,
right?
Plus the Valakut, but he does have Primeval Titan,
which is obviously what. Okay. Let's see. We're almost ready to go back to the main match, but we're just going to have a look at.
Yeah. So right here we're seeing Adam have this Primeval Titan. He's going to search up his library for 2 fetch lands. The reason he's finding these fetch lands is because he wants to, maintain the number of mountains that are in his deck so that he'll be able to combo Raymond when he needs to. If he did have Escape Shift in hand, I can't quite tell, but if he does, then he just needed that 7th land to win on that turn, but he did not find it. Now Raymond, once again being given the turn again, has no creatures in the battlefield. His graveyard seems to be a Monstrous Carabid and a Fulminator Mage, and he's going to need to cascade into another Living End so that he can get this Primeval Titan off of the table and start pressuring Adam again if he wants a chance of winning this game.
We have some results from the back tables. Michael Byars has taken the first game versus Nathan Smith, and Seth Manfield has taken the first one over Julian John. So we've got 2 games that have been completed on the back tables. We're going to actually go back to our main round because we want to make sure that we see the entire match there.
Yeah, this seems like a really interesting matchup too. I'd like to watch this. The Titan Shift deck is, again, it's a deck that has traditionally done well against control decks by virtue of simply having more mana than the control decks. And also, it's hard to play truly hard counter Magic in a format like Modern. And one of the interesting things about a card like Scape Shift is that you're casting it, it costs 4, but you're casting it when you have 7 or more lands in play, so it's just naturally resistant to mana leak.
Right.
It's foolproof, if you will. Foolproof.
So you're saying I can play that?
Exactly, of course you can. I can too. All of us fools.
Okay, so Larry seems to actually had a pretty good start to the game. 2 Search of Tomorrows. One of the more efficient ways to get ahead on the mana front. Patrick playing a Serum Visions. He has a Through the Breach, and he may even have an Emrakul. So, but I'm not sure if he has enough mana yet.
And may not have the 4th and 5th land in hand. Larry, his mana's exploding over here. going up to 3 when he searches the first time. He can play land now, go to 4. On the following turn, he can already be threatening to cast Primeval Titan. Scary stuff. If you're in Patrick's seat.
How did the matchup change after sideboarding?
So I think post-board, Larry Lee's Scapeshift deck gets a bit worse. I mean, he's probably bringing in Chandra, Torch of Defiance. He's probably bringing in 3 copies of Relic of Progenitus. But, I mean, when we look at Patrick Tierney's deck post-board, he gets to bring in a decent amount of extra counter magic, which is really good in a matchup like this. For example, Disdainful Stroke seems like, the coolest card in the history of the planet when you're playing against the deck that just wants to resolve Scapeshifts and Primeval Titans. Then, even Negate is quite strong. He has a few copies of that post-board. And, I mean, it just seems like the matchup improves for Patrick post-board. And I think it already favored him pre-board to some degree. So,
yeah, no, it was actually much closer than we were sure about. Sorry, much closer than it looked.
On paper.
On paper, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think happens with these Scapeshift decks. Over the years, when you look at them on paper, they've always kind of looked a little bit worse than they end up doing in any particular format.
So Larry's actually going to sacrifice his Relic of Progenitus, mainly just to get a cycle, though it probably hurts Patrick in any future Snapcaster Mages.
So now Larry searching up the 6th land. If he has another land, then he's capable of dealing 18 this turn. Perhaps more if he can combine it with a Bolt. But I imagine Patrick has some way to interact here.
He has a Negate, but I don't know if he has any other types of counter spells in hand. So I wonder if Larry goes for something like a Summoner's Pact, do you think that he'll let it resolve? Or, or do you think that he'll actually counter it if he has Negate? I mean, okay. Because one of the dangers is if he doesn't have another counterspell, the Titan's going to be really, really painful for him.
Absolutely.
But the thing is, if he counters it, it only costs Larry 0 mana, so he would be able to resolve something else.
Yeah, and by not countering it, you're also tying up 4 of Larry's mana on the following turn.
Okay. Seems fairly likely that Larry's going to try and play this Primeval Titan while he has 6 mana up.
Yeah, also, they've seen each other's deck lists, so Larry knows that with 3 mana available, there aren't a ton of different cards in Patrick's deck that can actually counter this Primeval Titan.
Yeah. One of the interesting things is if Patrick actually has a Remand in this spot, Titan will go back to his hand. He won't actually be able to cast it the next turn because he'll be locked under his Summoner's Pact for an additional turn.
That's absolutely true.
So it's almost a hard counter in this kind of matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Remand has always been very good in these matchups, even though Scapeshift costs 4 and they often have 8 lands when they're casting it. Oh, look at that. So,
yep, he's actually just going for the combo here. Playing a land.
And it's a Scapeshift. He's floating some mana.
Okay, so just a update in the back tables. Adam Pannone actually won that game. He was the Titan Shift player, beating the Living End deck. So we have all 4 matches having finished 1 game. Okay. This is kind of Patrick's time to shine. So he has a Through the Breach, but nothing to actually get put into play here.
Yeah. So a few frustrating draws here.
I mean, that's got to be some of the danger of this. The Emrakul doesn't do anything without it, and pretty much
Througe doesn't do anything without it either. And that's the thing. That's the drawback to this type of strategy, right? If he was playing a more traditional version, those cards would have been threats that he could have played.
Okay. Larry plays the Primal Titan that he saw 2 turns ago. Disdainful Stroke.
Yep.
Really, really efficient counter spell, especially for something that costs 6. So many of Larry's threats 4 or more. So this game's kind of heading into a little bit of the mid to late game now. Oh.
Yeah. And Cryptic Command, it's a fine card.
Yep. So Patrick's been able to deal with 2 of the Titans. So I wonder if he's actually going to be able to deal with all of them. Patrick opting. Doesn't want that one.
This does not look like a 15-15 flyer. I shall put it on the bottom of my library.
I think he picked up a Snapcaster Mage there. So he's got 2
That's
through the
nice
breaches,
one.
a Path Snapcaster Mage. So he's kind of clogged up with some kind of clunky cards right now. Like Path doesn't really help him against many cards except for Titan, but he's actually countered both of them. Larry just chipping in for 1 with the Sakura Tribe Elder.
And now with all the lands that Larry has in play, even just making his land drops, it's going to be a pretty fast clock here on Patrick.
Yep, does a lightning bolt to the face with that mountain. And important to remember that
I believe it's actually 6 damage to the face.
Oh, there's 2? Oh,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
2. There's another one. So Patrick's really in trouble here because the Sakura Tribe Elder itself actually represents 6 if it sacks. So just with another single attack, it's going to be lethal. This next attack is going to be lethal. So he's going to actually have to find some way to either block or kill the Sakura Tribe Elder. We know he has a Path in hand. So the problem with the Path is... I guess it doesn't really matter too much, but it'll still be 6 damage.
So let's see. Is he going to... he's going to opt here, get a card deeper.
Doesn't want that one. What is he looking for? Like, how do you think he deals with the situation here?
I think he needs the combo. The problem... The combo is good here because it will turn off the Valakuts because there won't be enough permanents on the other side of the table.
Okay. Finally got the...
You do it?
Through the breach. What did he put?
He did it.
Okay, so let's see if this is enough. So what he's going to do is actually sacrifice the Sakura Tribe Elder. Able to do 6. Now... Patrick's only coming through for a 17. Larry's at 20. He only has to sacrifice... it's Annihilator 6, is that right? So, technically...
Is that 6 cards? Yeah, it is. So.
Yeah, it's 6, and so...
So any mountain.
Any mountain will actually win the
Lightning
game.
Bolt, also good enough.
So, this will be interesting here. This is a lot of draws really just straight up kill Patrick here. He may have an extra turn, so just because the Snapcaster Mage only does 2, though I'm not sure if maybe there's an extra Lightning Bolt or Helix.
I think there's a Cryptic Command, which means that Patrick could bounce the Valakut back to his hand.
Okay.
And really thin out the number of outs that are available to Larry here. And by bouncing that Valakut, he ensures that naturally drawing a mountain is not good enough, that Larry actually needs to draw a ramp spell so he can play the Valakut and the ramp spell at the same turn. Oh, he's not doing that.
No, he doesn't have it.
He doesn't have it. Okay.
But he actually... Okay, so he actually draws another mountain. It happens to be a Sheltered Thicket, but it was good. It was good enough.
Wow.
So the last undefeated player, Patrick Tierney, and he was the first seed. It actually goes down to Larry Lee and his Titan Shift deck.
And that's impressive. That did not look like a good matchup on paper at all. Especially post-board where there were cards like Disdainful Stroke at the ready for Patrick.
But he was actually even able to withstand a 3 breach with the
You just had enough permanents in play to do it.
Okay, going to Seth Manfield and Julian John. Seth Manfield currently the number 1 seeded player in the world, ranked player in the world. Sorry. And this is actually a grudge match from round 14, where actually both players drew. it was actually a really, really like hard fought match, and it went to turns. And Julian had a really dominating ball position, but actually couldn't finish in time.
This matchup should be interesting. I mean, obviously they're playing what is essentially a mirror, though Seth has access to Thoughtseize, and the fact that Seth can take, one of the big spells, a key card, out of Julian's hand, that should give him a slight edge here.
On the downside, Seth is playing White Border as a Lanson. That's not good. That's not good on my part.
You don't like Chronicles?
Ugh.
You're not a fan of Chronicles?
Ugh.
Chronicles is weird because I think lifetime I've seen so few packs of Chronicles. Like I've seen less packs of Chronicles than I have Revised, and yet there's so much Chronicles. Like I feel like in my house I have more Chronicles cards than of any other set ever in Magic's history. It's insane. It's like they just appear out of thin air.
Chronicles was one of the first repeat sets for those who weren't around in the Stone Age of Magic. They actually did it was kind of the first Master set in some weird way.
Yeah, you're right, it was. So Seth was able to use that star to create green mana, and then that lets him Sylvan Scrying for his last piece of Tron, and now he's off to the races. He's got access to 7 mana on the 3rd turn. It looks like Julian may have to wait until the 4th turn before he can have access to tapping all of his Tron lands in the same turn. He might have to tap these 2 for 1 mana apiece and go and find that mine.
Yeah. He does have the card in hand, which is pretty much the best card in the matchup. I mean, it just trumps most of the opponent's cards, and it can go after the land base of the opposing Tron player. And so just breaking that up, generally making sure that they can't actually get to the big mana spells. So this will depend on whether Seth actually has something to do with his big mana, because he's going to hit it first.
Yeah, so looking for that big payoff here. Something that's interesting about Karn is that you often want to be the second person to play your Karn.
Yeah, but a lot of times it kind of depends if you can actually withstand the one hit with the minus, because sometimes it'll break up the Tron. So you can't actually play the Karn on the next turn. But you're right. If there's a Karn and you actually still have 7 mana, playing the second one kills the first one.
But in this spot here, Seth could aggressively play a Karn, minus it, kill a tower, and he's looking like he's home free.
Feels like he doesn't have it, because I think he would slam it pretty quickly.
I agree. I think he would be quite excited about it.
So he tapped the tower to play a Chromatic Sphere, cycled, most likely going for a green, though possibly a black, because he does have Thoughtseizes in his deck.
Yeah, I think his Thoughtseizes are only post-board, actually, now, looking at his deck list. So he's perhaps a bit nervous now. Has to worry about a Karn happening on the other side of the table.
Okay, so he's playing another Sphere and cycling it. So he actually still has 1 colorless floating right now. Did I miss this? No. I think he's 1 short. If float 4.
Nope. That's 7.
Because he cast a Sphere. Actually, I think he's 1 short.
No, he's good. It's
you're right.
It's exactly 5.
That's right. I actually forgot the extra mana that came from the Sphere, because he used that to cast the next Sphere. I'm totally wrong. I keep on thinking that the Sphere doesn't generate another mana.
Yeah.
Now this is really troublesome for Seth. I mean, he knows that Julian has a Karn in hand. One of the things that is quite good for him is he can't really go after the Thragtusk, because Thragtusk doesn't actually care if it's exiled or destroyed. What's
really great is that Karn goes down to 3 loyalty when it uses its minus ability. So if Julian does search for that Tron piece, then slam his Karn and minus it, breaking up Seth's Tron, then Seth can simply attack with the Thragtusk and kill the Karn. If Julian wanted to exile the Thragtusk to protect his Karn, then Seth could just attack with the token and deal with the Karn. So this Thragtusk play, even though Thragtusk doesn't seem like it's the most impressive thing you can do when you have access to 7 mana, it matches up really nicely against what he knows that Julian is capable of doing right now.
Yep. So it may be, if Julian doesn't have anything better, his Karn will probably just try and break up the Tron, because in both cases, if he tries to go for the Thragtusk, he's still going to lose his Karn.
I mean, he could, in theory, on this turn, simply cast Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, and plus it, killing the Thragtusk also.
Right. He also does have a... he has Oblivion Stone in his hand, and he can cast it and activate it should he want to. But what that allows Seth to have is a full turn with all his Tron mana. It could be...
Yeah, Seth could have easily found a Karn by now. All right, so Julian's going to go ahead and cast Ugin. So,
okay. So he's actually using the Lightning Bolt ability from Ugin. Ugin going from 7 to 9 loyalty. Or was it maybe it's +3? Maybe it's 6 to 9.
Yeah. And the play, very important in a matchup like this. There's Karn, also very important.
Okay, so Seth left with a beast that can somewhat pressure the Ugin down to 6. But that's not really good enough, because Ugin's going to be able to respond by killing that beast next turn. So Seth's going to have to have a better follow-up here.
Yeah, now what Seth really wants here is Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger.
Well, that is a good card.
Yes, it is. So, what Seth can do with this is he can exile 2 of Julian's lands. This will keep Julian from, having access to Tron. And, this Ugin here, it does not match up very well against Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. That's to be sure. But, Seth, it's hard to imagine, the scenarios in which you'd rather have a Stone Rain than a, exile your opponent's 8-mana Planeswalker. But in this situation, it may actually be correct for Seth to exile 2 lands.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Seth will get to the bottom of it. There are a lot of factors at hand, but, he's going to go ahead and do that. And I like this play from Seth a lot.
Basically, what he's trying to do is to make sure that there's no way of Julian either having or top decking his way out of this situation, because Ugin himself cannot kill Ulamog, and if, let's say, Seth only went for 1 Tron land, there's a chance that Julian would actually have that Tron land in his hand, play it, and then play Karn, removing the Ulamog. So, I think that's the reason why he actually went to go for the land. Now, what does Ugin really do? Kill the beast, do 3 damage. It's not really very good at the moment.
And Seth put himself in a really good position here. There's an Oblivion Stone, but that does not really do much here.
Not only that, Seth chose wisely in which Tron lands he destroyed, because the one that was in Julian's hand was the same one. It was another mine. So what that means is you won't be able to pop that Oblivion Stone until 2 turns from now.
Yeah, Seth somehow knowing which cards would be redundant in Julian's hand. He just felt it. So an attack here. Gonna finally get rid of this Ugin. Exile a whole bunch of cards from Julian's library.
Okay.
And Seth's deck has tons of action at this point.
Do you think there's a risk? And I'm not saying this is a really big risk. So he went... Oh, well, this is probably going to put the nail in the coffin, so whatever I was going to say is not going to be that important. What I was going to say is, if he attacked Karn, he actually gives Julian a chance to actually get up to 5 mana and use the Oblivion Stone, but
Yeah, he had the Sanctum, though. So you have to know that, like, if he has the Sanctum and he has any other big card in his hand, then he knows that he's going to get a Stone Rain in the following turn from the, what is it called? World Breaker that he'll be able to search up. So now he can exile another land with Card Liberty on the following turn and exile another land with World Breaker on the following turn, all while he's attacking with Ulamog.
Okay, I'm going to actually call this because...
Yeah, I think this one's over and done with. Let's go check out what's going on in that Living End matchup.
Okay. Well, we came back just in time to see a Living End. Let's see. I mean, he's 100% going to hit the Living End. I don't know how good the creatures in his graveyard are. There it is. Shuffling.
So something that's interesting about Living End against Secure Tribe Elder, that's one of the very best cards against Living End because you can sacrifice it, and then when they cascade and try to combo, it comes back to play, and then you can sacrifice it again, and that oftentimes will put your mana in a range where Scape Shift is lethal, and the Living End deck doesn't play any interaction for the Scape Shift, so drawing a Secure Tribe Elder, very powerful against the Living End deck, often puts you in a position where you're a full turn faster than you would have been otherwise.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like I see a Street Wraith and an Archfiend of Ifnir at least coming back for Raymond. So that's a pretty respectable amount of creatures, and probably one more.
Yeah, and one thing that's important to note about the Living End deck as of late is, these new cycling creatures make the deck quite a bit more powerful. Archfiend of Ifnir is a big one. A gigantic flyer is something the deck has wanted for a long time. That can just cycle for 2. It's great. And the fact that when it comes back, you can just start cycling more cards and punish people who have creatures of their own in the graveyard.
And it's flying. I think that's a really, really...
I think that's the biggest factor of all, yeah.
Just able to get over a lot of the cards that come back from it. Okay. So Adam blocking the Monstrous Carabid with his Secure Tribe Elder. Getting a mountain, bringing him to 6 land. If he has a land in Escape Shift, I don't know exactly in his hand. He'll be likely have a lethal.
Yeah.
If not, it's going to be, another... Let's see, how much damage get through that turn? Like 8? So Adam's on 11, so he actually has lethal right now. So unless he does something to Raymond's creatures or kills Raymond completely, he's going to be facing lethal damage the next turn.
So the new cycler that I've been most impressed with out of the Living End deck when I've played against it is Horror of the Broken Lands.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have people cast Living End, and then they'd attack me on the following turn, and I wouldn't be dead, and then I'd have to get attacked again for them to kill me. So I'd have some time to figure something out, whereas nowadays Living End, this Horror of the Broken Lands comes back, and they cycle 3 cards in the next turn when they attack me, and I just lose.
Okay, so Raymond actually plays a Fulminator Mage, getting rid of the Stomping Ground on Adam's side. Actually, that's quite important because it means that the Scape Shift land combo does not get him the full amount of damage.
Yeah, so Adam would need to be able to do something like play a ramp spell and play Escape Shift this turn and have a land to play. And if he can do all of that, then he could deal 18 damage on this turn. However, it looks like he may have to be content with, if he has 1 land at least, casting a Primeval Titan or doing something in that regard.
One of the lands in his hand is a Valakut, but that one comes into play tapped, so that's actually not very good for him right now. And it may actually... Okay, there's the Valakut, so no prime time right now. So, does actually casting Scape Shift do anything here? Let's say he needs a Desperation Scape Shift.
It doesn't do anything here. It's only 6 lands.
Yep.
1 more land and it would do a whole lot.
So Adam really kind of I think he has 2 prime times.
Summoner's Pact and then some red card.
Yeah. And I think he actually has Escape Shift too, so it looks like he may not actually be able to stop the lethal attack. Okay, he goes Summoner's Pact. It's possible that he has something else to cast, maybe something like a Thrag Tusk or
Secure Tribe Elder, I imagine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this will actually mean that he doesn't die next turn, unless actually if
a cycler kills him. And there are a lot of cyclers in this deck.
A cycler will kill him, but also he has to pay for the pack the next turn. So he doesn't really give himself that much extra time.
Well, what's interesting, though, is that he'll have to pay for the pact, but if he's able to get an untapped land, he'll still have enough mana.
Right.
To scape shift.
He'll get up to 8.
Yeah.
Because the Secure Tribe Elder actually brings him up to 7, and he has to kind of draw an untapped one, giving him 8, allowing him to pay for the pact as well as still play the escape shift the next turn.
And I'm actually pretty impressed with Adam here. I mean, I think a lot of people would have just conceded on that last turn. He found a way for it to be possible for him to win, and he's going to give himself an opportunity, every opportunity available, to find a way to win this game against Living End.
Okay, let's see if Raymond has a 1-mana cycler that allows him to actually doesn't need a 1-mana cycler. He can do it on his main phase as well. He just has to have a cycler, which is a pretty good percentage of his deck.
Yes.
Okay.
So, is it? Could it be?
Seems pretty unlikely not. Oh, wow. No cycler.
Wow.
So now the door is a tiny crack open for Adam to to draw an untapped land, unless Raymond has another card to change the situation. I mean, he could have a Fulminator Mage, which actually puts them back again. That would actually be pretty optimal. I'm trying to think of other cards that he could have had.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be something like copies of Living End, cascade spells, lands.
The thing is that I think both cascade spells kill Adam, because he could actually play the Dread on the Elder, so it couldn't block, so he would die, or the +1 from the Violent Outburst would also kill him. So actually, it might not kill him. That wouldn't be enough. So the Violent Outburst, it's possible he had that in his hand. So that would only be 10 damage rather than 11.
Is it a May?
The
when you cascade?
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to
cast it.
You do not have to cast it.
Yeah, it's been a little while on that.
And that actually would have been worth to do, because he has a Windswept Heath, and actually would have locked him out of using that as a way of getting through the next turn. So actually, probably would have just won the game on there.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see what actually was in Raymond's hand there.
I actually do see a Violent Outburst.
He may not have. Oh, hold on. Does he have a green? No, he has a Blooming Marsh.
Yeah, he has a Blooming Marsh and a Blackleaf Cliffs, pair of swamps there. So
I think he may have just kept it because he wanted to have it back up. And also,
he may also have some way to interact if Adam does go off right here. Like, he may have some sort of instant speed way to interact, right?
I mean, he
like
kind of
Beast
does,
Within or something.
Like,
that's a card he could definitely have as Beast Within.
Right. I'm trying to figure out, does he can actually return the Fulminator as an instant? I don't know. Does that save him?
Yes, it does. If Adam's going off with 7.
Okay, but Adam couldn't draw the extra land to actually try and go off, and so Raymond actually is able to take it to a third game.
And Living End is a deck that has, come and gone over the history of Modern. It's a deck that is like Dredge, somewhat weak to graveyard for removal for obvious reasons. But the thing about it is, it's not like it just dumps a whole bunch of stuff into the graveyard and then, does this thing. It's cycling those cards. So, if you can't find your, cycler, your Cascade spell that's going to allow you to combo, so many of the cards in your deck have this cycling mechanic that they actually, part of the combo helps you find the other part of the combo, which is a pretty impressive thing. You're by putting the creatures in your graveyard to be reanimated, you're drawing for the reanimation spell. And, the Living Death effect, the effect of, wrathing the board and then putting all the creatures from the graveyard back into the battlefield is so powerful because if your opponent's being aggressive, you get to wipe the board while creating a massive board presence. And it makes, creature-based matchups just dream matchups for you. And against decks that have a lot of targeted discard, you're a really strong deck also because when you're playing this type of combo deck, you wait till their end step, you cycle a bunch of things, and then during that process of cycling things, you can find the Cascade spell that they would have normally beaten combo decks by making the combo deck discard key cards. But you find those cards on their end step. So you can beat those decks with discard spells. Traditionally, Living End is pretty weak to blue decks, to decks that can simply counter the Living End. Remand is especially powerful against Living End. It feels really, 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 really bad when your opponent has a Remand and you're playing Living End.
I wonder how many times you actually win by just suspending Living End and kind of playing to that.
I've never seen it happen. I haven't played with the deck, but I've seen a number of people play the deck. I have friends that play the deck. I'm sure one of them has a story of it happening, but I've never seen it happen personally.
Okay, we're finishing sideboarding and shuffling up for Game 3. Important to note that the players actually had access to each other's deck lists, so you have a little bit more information to how to sideboard in the quarterfinals and the rest of the finals.
Yeah, so they have full knowledge of what the other person has access to here. There's a Relic of Progenitus in the sideboard for Adam. I'm sure he'd really like to draw that one.
Anything else that's...
Anything graveyard-centric? No. However, he does have other cards which are pretty decent in general.
He has 2 Inferno Titan in the sideboard. Do you think it's good enough to bring in to so you have more threats?
I think he may just end up keeping his deck as is with 1 Relic of Progenitus, perhaps over 1 Lightning Bolt. He may want to take out the other 2 bolts and bring in more threats, but that's about all I can think of. Maybe Tireless Tracker could be good here.
So how does Raymond actually change his deck? He's got some pretty dedicated sideboard cards, but I don't know if any of them are particularly good in this matchup.
So Slaughter Games can be quite good in this matchup. If you take the Scape Shifts out of their deck or you take the Primeval Titans out of their deck, it basically makes their deck do half as much. Another card, Beast Within, functions as a Stone Rain. We saw it in the last game. Be very strong. Or we didn't see it. We saw Fulminator Mage, but it would have functioned very similarly to Fulminator Mage. The card, it kills a land, and if you're using it, especially before a Living End, the drawback of giving your opponent a 3/3 is completely mitigated. So that's a card that Raymond's really happy to pick up from post-boarded games. So I think Raymond's matchup certainly gets better post-board. I still think this is a fairly even matchup. I think Adam really wants to draw Secure Drive Elders, and he really wants to draw Scape Shifts.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I mean, a lot of these decks appear non-interactive, kind of like their plans are very linear, but ultimately, it's kind of a game of information. It's like, how fast do I need to go to actually, to push? Because, let's say something like Storm, or let's say something like Tron, knowing what your opponent can do and is capable of doing is really, really important. So how you position yourself, because sometimes you just want to give yourself a little bit more time if you have time for it.
Yeah, and for example, in that last game, I think Raymond, he could have used that violent outburst.
Yep.
Last turn, and that would have cut off the ability to sacrifice that windswept heath, which could have made all the difference in the game. And it's these little small edges that you look for over the course of a match.
Okay. Getting started on the last game of the quarterfinals. I did see a demonic dread in Raymond's hand, so he definitely has a way of putting a living end onto the stack. One weird thing about the demonic dread, it actually needs a target to be a cast. So if Adam doesn't play a creature, he doesn't have that many creatures, he won't actually be able to play the demonic dread. Obviously Raymond could target his own creature, but he doesn't actually have that many smaller creatures, so it actually is possible he can't play it on the turn 3.
Yeah, so here we see a turn 1 Relic of Progenitus for Adam, and he's got to be really thrilled with that. Again, post-board, he has 3 copies of this in his deck now.
Okay, we have just an update for the Nathan Smith-Michael Byars match. Nathan Smith on Dredge versus Michael Byars on Mono Green Tron. Nathan Smith with Dredge actually won 2-1 over Michael Byars. So one of the Tron decks going down there.
Wow. Well done by Nathan Smith. Michael Byers' deck had main deck Relic of Progenitus, and it had quite a few Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. Both cards are very strong against Dredge, so Nathan Smith doing some good work out there, defeating these Tron overlords.
So just to recap this, Larry Liu is through to the semifinals with Scapeshift, Seth Manfield with Black-Green Tron, and Nathan Smith with Dredge. So 3 different decks. Maybe 4, maybe only 3, because if Raymond wins, it will be 4, and if Titan Shift wins, it will actually be 3, because I think the
Titan Shift will be the deck of the weekend.
Yeah.
After all that.
Titan Shift and Scapeshift are very, very similar. I generally pull them into the same pool of decks.
Yeah, so I kind of have always thought that Scapeshift as a deck, that you're referring to a deck with Cryptic Command in it. When you say Titan Shift, I think you're talking about a red-green deck. But when you say Titan Shift or red-green Scapeshift, I think of the same deck. Right. I think that they're...
Actually, and to be honest, having a closer look at these decks, they're pretty close. Larry's tries to be a little bit more, I'll call it combo-y, because he has Colony Heart Expedition.
And Omen, then. Omen combos well with Expedition, right. I imagine. So
yeah, so whereas there's no Prismatic Omens in Adam's deck, so he's much more on the Titan plan rather than the, mega combo plan with Prismatic Omen and Scapeshift. Okay, so Adam gets a pretty optimal start. Relic Progenitus, obviously one of the best cards against the Living End deck, but he also has actually been able to essentially effectively ramp twice. He's already ramped once with one of his Sakura Tribe Elders. He has another one in play, so he can get up to 5 mana and 6 mana on his 4th turn.
What's really impressive about this draw from Adam right now is that when he sacrifices the second Sakura Tribe Elder, then when Raymond casts a Living End, it's going to essentially mean that Adam has access to 2 additional lands on the following turn, because both those Sakura Tribe Elders will re-enter the battlefield. And if that's happening, then any Scapeshift that Adam draws at some point or another will basically just be lethal right away.
Right, and Living End does not win the turn it casts Living End. It actually wins the turn after, because the creatures themselves don't have haste. So, there's often a lot of creatures in play, but not a lethal amount. And if the Titan Shift player is actually able to, ramp up to the next mana level, they can just win on the turn before they get attacked.
Yeah, so now Adam starting to get a little bit aggressive with the Sakura Tribe Elder. Does not have a 4th land or a ramp spell.
Wow,
Cannot be happy about that.
So one interesting thing about Raymond's play the last turn, he actually fulminated the Stomping Ground and not the Valakut. Now, obviously trying to knock Adam off his second green. What do you think of that?
I think it's very interesting. I think I like it because it prevents Adam from doing things like paying for Summoner's Pact and casting Scape Shift on the same turn. He has another Fulminator Mage too. That makes it even more impressive.
So I think Raymond is now turned into a Ponza deck.
Yeah, looks like it. I mean, he could hard cast a Monstrous Carabid next turn, and I would feel very good about his chances of winning this game.
Yeah, no, actually, it's definitely one of the angles of the Living End deck. A lot of times, if they play against Graveyard Hate, they just start hard casting their 5-mana creatures.
Yeah. Like, imagine he just goes Archfiend of Vifnir here. Yep. That's a real problem, right? That's a 5-power flying creature.
14 clock. He's got Monstrous Carabid, also, a reasonable clock. And Adam's not really got any sort of pressure. Like, he's stalled on mana, so there's no threat of either a Titan or a Scape Shift with any relevance.
Ooh, does Raymond have another Fulminator Mage? That would be really good.
Though Adam does not have a...
he doesn't have a non-basic, but, I mean, it's still insane, right? You just kill whatever non-basic when they draw it.
Okay, Raymond tapping out almost certainly for a fatty. And it's probably the best one because it's the one that can't be blocked by actually all of Adam's deck. I don't think he has any flyers or reach creatures.
Yeah, so this is Archfiend of Vifnir. If any of you guys played with this card in Limited, it was awesome. Have you ever played Seal Deck with that card?
Oh, yeah.
It's the best thing that's ever happened in person.
I actually opened this one at the pre-release and I was like, oh, I think I got one of the good ones.
Yeah. I think this worked out well for me.
Okay. It really looked like Living End was in trouble with that start of like Relic and double Sakura Tribe Elder, but Adam just unable to capitalize on that.
Yeah, I mean, double Fulminator Mage put him in a pretty rough spot.
Yep.
And now here he is, forced to crack this Relic of Progenitus.
Yeah, he just realizes that the game's not going to be about the graveyard now. It's just he doesn't have an answer to the Archfiend, at least at hand, and 4 turns later, he's going to be take lethal damage.
Adam, by the way, ordering that very well. He made sure to crack the Relic of Progenitus before sacrificing the Sakura Tribe Elder, just in case Living End did become a factor later on in the game. Wants to ensure that that Living End will allow him to get that Sakura Tribe Elder back, representing another land.
I mean, Adam's still actually not very far off, starting to recontrol the game. I mean, 2 land, and then he casts like a Primeval Titan, and then the next turn Scapeshift kills him again. So it's not that far off. And he drew a land, which is good for him. Okay. Let's see if Raymond actually adds to the board, because actually adding to the board is not irrelevant here.
It speeds up the clock by quite a bit. And right now, Adam is going to be attacked down to 13 by this Archfiend of Vifnir.
Optimally would like to cast another Archfiend. Let's see.
Close the door.
Yep, okay.
It's a Street Wraith.
Probably the least worrisome of all the creatures, because this doesn't...
It's so funny that people... It's just it's just a 3/4 for 5. That's all it is right now in this matchup. And yet it is basically just as good as a 6/6 or 7/7 for 5 would be in this spot. Okay,
so actually this is really interesting, because now Adam doesn't look like he's in danger of dying next turn. He definitely has a 6th land available to him with the Sakura Tribe Elder. And we know that he has Scape Shift in hand. So actually, he's a land away from just winning the game.
Yeah. He's a land away from, making his way to the semifinals here.
Okay. So Raymond pays life to cycle the Street Wraith. And
did he not sacrifice it to
He
the
did.
ability? Oh, okay.
He did.
I thought it cycled and then he just put it in the graveyard and didn't pick up his deck, and I was so confused. Marginally terrified.
So I'm trying to think of like ways that the math can change here. It's possible if Raymond, I didn't check his mana, but if he has 2 violent outbursts, he'll put Adam to 12, meaning that the
Wood
foothills
is turned off.
But that's probably not that important because he doesn't actually need it. He doesn't
For
need
escape shift 1.
Yeah, that's right. So Adam really is going to go sweat a land. Yep, it doesn't look like he has one available to him. So, oh, you know what? I think he actually may be able to win anyway because I think he has a Summoner's Pact.
Oh, so he could go get a Secure Tribe Elder.
Right.
Yeah, and in doing so, by finding that Secure Tribe Elder, he puts himself up to 7 lands. And
Okay.
they can go off. Wow.
Raymond attacks for 8, bringing Adam down to 5.
Yeah, and
Okay. So
let's see.
let's see what's happening here. I'm not positive he has a Summoner's Pact, but he really just needs a land. He does not draw a land, but actually he draws
Search for tomorrow, which is good enough because Brick puts the land to play untapped.
Yep. It looks like
So, yeah, Search for Tomorrow here would put him up to 4 remaining untapped lands. So you can tap those 4 lands, cast Scape Shift, and deal Raymond 18 damage.
Is there anything
Raymond's
that could
at 18
happen?
life.
Yeah. Is there anything that could happen? I mean, so there's Beast Within, so it's actually possible that Raymond could Beast Within in response. Is it possible to respond to the Valakut triggers, or is it already too late?
You can, in fact, respond to the Valakut triggers. So, Valakut, you can't respond to the Valakut triggers in the way of, like, oh, I'll kill the Valakut before these triggers go on the stack and kill me. But you can do it in such a way that when those triggers are all on the stack, you use a land destruction spell that will kill one of the mountains.
Right.
And then when it checks to see the other mountains, if there aren't 5 other mountains, it will not deal the 3 damage.
Right. So if he doesn't have enough basic mountains, it actually may be troublesome there. Okay.
Yeah. If Raymond has Beast Within, which I think he has 3 copies of Postboard in this matchup.
Okay. Adam is going to sacrifice his Elder, getting another mountain. Sacrifice the foothills, going down to 7. I'm not sure if he's actually... I think he's at 4, actually. But in any case, he's going to cast Scape Shift. Let's see if Raymond has any sort of, comeback here. Well, Raymond doesn't seem like he's conceding immediately, so...
Yeah, I mean, if he had Beast Within, he could just use it on the Cinderglade here in response to the Scape Shift, and then
Oh, yes.
the Scape Shift wouldn't even do anything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he doesn't have it from the looks of things. And Adam, if he finds 6 different mountains and a Valakut, believe the game ends.
I think Raymond's just kind of setting it up as a check, doing a read of the Scape Shift to see, is there any way that this does not kill me? Has a look at the Valakut, but I think if he had something, he would have probably responded by now. He can't kill a mountain now because he's getting 6 mountains. Oh, but it has to be 5.
Yeah, he can kill a mountain.
He can kill a mountain.
It's good enough. So all these triggers are on.
He hasn't conceded yet.
He has not.
So it makes me think, does he have something?
I think he's not even sitting at the table anymore.
I think he's asking
He
the
may be
judge.
asking a judge how it works. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I don't think the judge can explain this to him, by the way. I think he's allowed to read. He has to read the card himself and figure it out, right?
I think he can ask certain questions. Like he says, if there are not 5 other mountains in play, does it resolve in the
Yeah.
positive? I think he didn't ask that question. If you ask it like that.
I don't think a judge could give you an answer to that question.
Really?
I think a judge would say, read the card. Yeah.
So,
It's an interesting situation.
yep, we can actually see Raymond actually just with one of the judges asking.
But I mean, if he had the beast within at all, he could have just used it in response to the scape
so
shift.
Is there anything else? I mean, let's have a quick look at the living end deck. Is there anything else he could respond to? Because if he has cycling cards, he could actually cycle and maybe trying to get.
Maybe
Beast
try to
Within?
find it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Beast Within is the only card in here that could interact at all right now.
Yep, I'm pretty sure. I mean, the thing is,
So.
if he does have the beast within, he might as well just cast it.
Yeah, because
Right.
if it works, it works.
Yeah,
If it doesn't,
right?
right?
It doesn't. It doesn't. So,
I agree with you. Just to see what happens, right?
I mean, but this
All right,
judge.
so he's come back to the table.
Okay.
All right. The longest sweat of all. Here we go. This is going to be so brutal for Adam. If he has it, this is the worst slow roll of all time. But
He doesn't look like he has it.
it does not.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Oh my! Oh my God! Oh! Oh my God!
Okay. So it looks like Raymond DeVoe. So what happens here is, Valakut, there have to be 5. The triggers go on the stack, but when the trigger resolves, it checks to make sure there are 5 of their mountains. There were not. So the Valakut triggers do nothing. And Raymond DeVoe will be able to attack for the win on the following turn.
Yeah, and I mean, look. Okay, I mean, that was an amazing. I mean, I'm sure Raymond didn't do that on purpose. He just wasn't sure about the rules because, I mean, he went off. He talked to the judge. I think he was very, very careful about that. But that's the end of the quarterfinals. So we'll be back after these messages. Gallery, Oklahoma City. We actually have an update for the quarterfinals. A lot of you were watching the Raymond deviteaux Living End versus Adam Pannone's Scapeshift deck. So we were talking about a ruling that happened right at the end of the game. Adam had just cast a Scapeshift, gotten 6 mountains and a Valakut. Essentially trying to put like all the lethal triggers targeting
Exactly, 18
Raymond.
damage.
And Raymond had a beast within his hand, and he actually talked to the head judge to find out what happens if he beast within, or some sort of ruling to do with his beast within.
And the judge explained that he can't tell him what happens. He has to read the card. So Raymond went back to the table. He tapped 3 mana. He cast the beast within, and then he conceded.
Yeah.
He did not understand that the Valakut triggers, when they resolved, would not deal damage. The Valakut triggers would still resolve, but they would not deal damage because there were not 5 of their mountains, and he did not know that, and he conceded to Adam.
Right.
So the Living End player actually did not win. He conceded the game before attacking for lethal. They shook hands, and he conceded, and that's what happened. So it's very difficult to tell that from watching, but update for you guys: Living End loses to Red Green Scapeshift in 3 games.
Okay, so I just wanted to do a recap of who actually made it to the semifinals. Larry Lee with Scapeshift over Patrick Tierney, so Larry advances. Seth Manfield over Julian John. Seth advances with Black Green Tron. Adam Pannone defeats Raymond deviteaux on Living End, so Titan Shift advances to the semifinal. And Nathan Smith on Dredge over Michael Byars on Mono Green Tron. So we we'll just set up the semifinals, and we'll be back with you in a couple minutes.
Test your skill against your local store community and become store champion this December 25th through 31st. Everyone who plays gets a premium full art rare, with top finishers receiving a deck box featuring Rivals of Ixalan art. If you win the whole event, you'll get the title of store champion and an exclusive store champion playmat to commemorate the victory. Find a store championship near you at magic.wizards.com/storechamps. Up your game with Ultra Pro Magic the Gathering accessories. Find the best Magic art on card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and more. Visit ultrapro.com to learn more and find a retailer near you.
Hello there, and welcome back to coverage here at Grand Prix Oklahoma City. Did I miss anything?
Well, we had a little bit of kind
hiccup.
of excitement happen in the last quarterfinal match.